You know that moment when everyone's left the party, the last text has been sent, and it's just you? For a lot of people, that moment feels like something's wrong. Like silence is a problem to be solved. So they reach for the phone, they turn on the TV, anything to avoid sitting with themselves for more than 90 seconds. But here's something I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed it too. The people who seem the most grounded, the ones who don't crumble every time life gets messy, they're usually the ones who are okay being alone. Not lonely, alone. There's a difference, and it's a bigger difference than most of us realize. I used to think being alone a lot meant something was missing from my life. Turns out, it was teaching me the exact things I needed to stop falling apart every time someone let me down. So today, let's talk about why the strongest people you know actually choose solitude, and what it does to a person over time that nothing else can. Before we continue, I have something that might really help you. If you're enjoying these lessons but sometimes feel like you need more practice, more structure, or someone to guide you personally, I've created the complete English fluency system just for that. Inside, you'll find everything organized in one place: premium lessons, English books, worksheets, speaking practice, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and much more. No more jumping from one random video to another. And the best part? You're not learning alone. Whenever you have a question or need help, you can contact me directly. I'll be there to support you throughout your English journey. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced learner, this program will help you build real confidence and make consistent progress. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, you'll find the link in the description. Now, let's get back to today's lesson. Reason 1. Solitude shows you what you actually think. Here's a question worth sitting with. When's the last time you formed an opinion completely on your own, without checking how 5 other people felt about it first? Most of us don't even notice we're doing it. Someone posts something online, and before we've fully read it, we're already scrolling the comments to see what the right reaction is supposed to be. A friend says a movie was terrible, and suddenly our own opinion softens to match theirs. We think we're deciding things. Most of the time, we're just absorbing. I had a friend, I'll call her Maya, who spent years being what everyone called easygoing. She agreed with whoever she was talking to, loved every restaurant her friends picked, never had a strong opinion on politics, movies, relationships, anything. People liked her for it. But she told me once, late at night after a few glasses of wine, that she genuinely didn't know what she believed about half the things in her life. She'd spent so much time absorbing everyone else's opinions that her own voice had gone quiet. Then her job went remote. Suddenly, she was spending long stretches of her day with nobody to bounce thoughts off of. At first, it felt unbearable, she told me. The silence in her apartment felt loud, if that makes sense. But a strange thing started happening after a few months. She started noticing her own reactions to things before anyone else's voice got in the way. She actually hated a book everyone loved, and instead of pretending to like it, she just said so. It felt small, but it wasn't small to her. This is what solitude does that constant company can't. When you're alone, there's no one to perform for, no one whose face you're watching for approval. Your reactions are just yours, raw, unfiltered, actually you. And when you practice that enough, you start to trust your own judgment in a way you simply can't when you're always checking the room first. Strong people tend to have done this work. Not because they hate people, most of them love being around others, but because they've spent enough time alone to know the difference between "this is what I think" and "this is what I think I'm supposed to think." That's not a small skill. That's the foundation of basically every good decision you'll ever make, from who you date to what you do with your career. And here's the part that surprises people. Once you know your own mind, you actually become a better friend, a better partner, a better collaborator. Because you're not just an echo anymore. You bring something real to the table. Nobody wants a mirror. They want a person. And you can't become a real person to others until you've spent some real time as a person to yourself, with nobody else's opinions crowding the room. So next time you're alone and it feels uncomfortable, try this instead of reaching for your phone. Ask yourself what you actually think about something, anything, without any outside input. It'll feel strange at first. Stick with it. That discomfort is just the sound of your own voice getting louder. Reason 2. It builds a kind of independence that can't be shaken. Let's be honest about something most self-help content won't say directly. A lot of us are quietly terrified of being left. Not just romantically, I mean in every sense. Terrified our friends will drift, our family will get busy, our partner will lose interest. And that fear, even when we don't say it out loud, ends up steering a lot of our decisions. I think about a guy I used to work with, David, who was one of the most likable people in the office. Genuinely funny, always down to help, always the first to organize the group lunch. But underneath that, he told me once, was this constant low hum of anxiety. What if people stopped inviting him? What if he wasn't needed anymore? He built his entire identity around being indispensable to others. And it worked for a while, until it didn't. He went through a rough breakup, the kind that also cost him half his friend group because, as it turns out, a lot of his friendships had actually been through his ex. Suddenly, he was alone in a way he'd never been before. No plans on the weekend, no one checking in daily, and for the first month, he told me, it was genuinely one of the worst periods of his life. But something shifted around week 5. He started going on solo hikes, just because there was nothing else to do with a Saturday. He started cooking meals for just himself instead of ordering in, because eating alone felt too sad. And slowly, he realized something that changed how he saw everything. He could actually take care of himself. Emotionally, practically, all of it. He didn't need someone else in the room to have a good day. That's the independence I'm talking about. Not the "I don't need anybody" kind of independence that's really just a wall people build to avoid getting hurt. I mean the real kind. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can be your own company. You can entertain yourself, soothe yourself, make your own decisions without a committee. And weirdly, that's what makes people want to be around you more, not less. Neediness pushes people away. Groundedness pulls them in. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they're not the ones who fall apart the second they're single, or the ones who can't make a decision without texting the group chat first. They're the ones who seem whole on their own, and then choose to share that wholeness with others, instead of using other people to fill a hole. This is where a lot of us get it backwards. We think relationships are supposed to complete us. But relationships built on that idea tend to be exhausting, because you're asking another person to do a job that was always yours to do. Solitude is where you actually do that job. It's uncomfortable, it's slow, and honestly, some days it's just boring. But it's the only place where that particular kind of strength gets built. So if you're going through a stretch of being more alone than usual right now, after a move, a breakup, a friend group that's scattered, try not to treat it purely as a loss. It might be the exact space you need to find out you're more capable than you thought. That discovery doesn't happen in a crowd. It only happens in the quiet. Reason 3. It's where the real decisions actually get made. Ever notice how the biggest decisions in your life rarely get made in the middle of a busy day? Nobody decides to change careers while scrolling through a group chat. Nobody figures out their next move on a relationship during a loud dinner with 6 opinions flying at them. The real decisions, the ones that actually change the direction of your life, almost always happen in some quiet moment. In the shower, on a long drive by yourself, lying awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling. There's a reason for that, and it's not mystical. It's just noise. Every person you talk to brings their own fears, their own experiences, their own agenda into the conversation, whether they mean to or not. Ask 10 people whether you should quit your job, and you'll get 10 different answers shaped by 10 different lives that aren't yours. Ask yourself the same question in total silence, and something different happens. You start hearing what you actually want, underneath what everyone else thinks you should want. I remember a woman I interviewed once for a completely unrelated project. She'd left a stable corporate job to start a small pottery studio, which sounds like a cliché until you hear the details. She told me that for 2 years, she talked herself out of it every single time she brought it up to friends or family. Everyone had an opinion. Her mom thought it was reckless. Her best friend thought it sounded amazing but never actually encouraged her to act. Her coworkers thought she was joking. What finally pushed her to do it wasn't a pep talk from someone else. It was a solo trip she took, alone, after a particularly bad week at work. 5 days with no one to talk to but herself. She told me that by day 3, the noise of everyone else's opinions had finally quieted down enough that she could hear her own voice again, clearly, for what felt like the first time in years. She made the decision on that trip. Not because a stranger gave her permission, because she'd finally given herself the space to hear what she already knew. This is the part people miss about solitude. It's not just emotionally useful, it's practically useful. It's a decision-making tool. When you're constantly surrounded by input, you're constantly reacting. You never get to the bottom of what you actually think, because there's always another voice adding to the pile. Strong people protect time alone specifically because they know this. They're not antisocial. They're just aware that clarity requires quiet. And quiet is getting harder and harder to find. If you're stuck on a decision right now, a big one, the kind that's been sitting in the back of your mind for weeks, try this. Turn off your phone. Go somewhere with no one else around, even if it's just your own room with the door shut. Give yourself 30 minutes of nothing but your own thoughts, no distractions allowed. It'll feel uncomfortable, maybe even a little boring at first. But somewhere in that discomfort is usually the answer you've been avoiding because it's been too loud around you to hear it. Reason 4. It teaches you who you can actually rely on. There's a particular kind of confidence that only comes from getting through something hard by yourself, not with a support group holding your hand through every step. Just you, a problem, and no one else in the room to fix it for you. I think about my own experience moving to a new city where I didn't know a single person. The first few months were rough, if I'm being honest. I'd go entire weekends without a real conversation. There were nights I sat in my apartment wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. But somewhere around month 4, something clicked. I'd figured out how to fix a leaking pipe using a video and pure stubbornness. I'd navigated a medical issue completely on my own, making all the calls, asking all the questions, with nobody to lean on. I'd sat with a bad week and gotten through it without calling anyone to rescue me from my own feelings. None of that would have happened if I'd had a built-in support system the whole time. And I don't say that to romanticize hardship. Being alone in a new city was genuinely difficult, and I wouldn't wish that particular loneliness on anyone. But it did something that comfort never could have. It proved to me, in a way no pep talk ever could, that I was more capable than I gave myself credit for. This is the piece a lot of people miss when they avoid being alone at all costs. Every time you outsource a hard moment to someone else, every time you immediately call a friend the second something goes wrong instead of sitting with it first, you lose a small chance to prove something to yourself. I'm not saying never ask for help. Asking for help is healthy and human and honestly underrated. But there's a difference between asking for help because you've thought it through and can't do it alone versus reaching for someone else automatically because sitting with discomfort by yourself feels unbearable. Strong people have usually had enough alone time to know what they're actually capable of. They've sat with panic and watched it pass without a rescue call. They've solved a problem with nothing but their own resourcefulness. They've comforted themselves after bad news instead of needing someone else to do it for them. And that history matters because it becomes evidence. The next time something hard happens, they're not starting from zero, wondering if they can handle it. They already have proof that they can. If you've never really tested that with yourself, it might be worth trying, in small doses. Next time something minor goes wrong, a plan falls through, you get some disappointing news, you're anxious about something, try sitting with it alone for even just 20 minutes before you call someone. Not to punish yourself, just to see what you're capable of handling. You might surprise yourself. Most people do. Reason 5. It's the foundation of real connection, not the opposite of it. Here's the part that sounds like a contradiction until you actually live it. The people who are best at being alone tend to be the best at genuine connection too. That sounds backwards, right? You'd think the people who need others the most would be the best partners, the best friends, the ones who show up hardest for relationships. But think about it from the other side for a second. If you can't stand being alone, what are you actually bringing into a relationship? You're bringing a hole that needs to be filled. And the other person can feel that, even if neither of you can name it directly. It shows up as jealousy, as anxiety when they don't text back fast enough, as resentment when they need space because their need for space feels like a threat to you. I saw this play out clearly with a couple I knew, Sam and Jordan. Sam had never really learned to be alone, went straight from his parents' house to a college dorm, to living with a girlfriend, to living with Jordan. He'd literally never lived by himself for more than a few weeks. And it showed up in the relationship in small, corrosive ways. He'd get anxious when Jordan wanted a night out with her own friends. He needed constant reassurance. Not because he didn't trust Jordan exactly, but because he'd never built the internal skill of being okay on his own, so her absence felt like a small crisis every time. Jordan, on the other hand, had spent 2 years living alone in her 20s before they met. She'd built a whole life she was happy with by herself. Hobbies, friendships, a rhythm to her days that didn't depend on another person. And it changed the entire texture of how she showed up in the relationship. She wasn't with Sam because she needed him to complete something missing in her life. She was with him because she genuinely wanted to be. That's a different kind of love, and honestly, it's a more stable one. It doesn't panic. It doesn't grip too tight. It has room to breathe. This is the paradox that strong people seem to understand, whether they've thought about it explicitly or not. Solitude isn't the opposite of connection. It's what makes real connection possible in the first place. When you're whole on your own, you're not asking another person to be your everything. You get to actually enjoy them instead of depending on them. You get to want them instead of needing them like oxygen. And strangely enough, that's the version of love that tends to last, because it's not running on scarcity or fear. It's running on genuine choice, made fresh every day. So if you've been avoiding time alone because it feels like loneliness or like something's wrong, consider flipping the story. That time alone isn't taking you away from connection. It might be the exact thing building your capacity for it. The strongest relationships you'll ever have will be built by two people who know how to be alone and choose each other anyway. Not out of need, out of want. And that's a much better foundation to build a life on.